Vultures are large scavenging birds found across most of the world. Built to find and consume carrion, they play a critical role in ecosystems by recycling nutrients and preventing the spread of disease. They vary from the nostril-through-skull New World vultures like the turkey vulture to the Old World vultures such as the griffin and bearded vulture, and each group evolved similar scavenging adaptations independently. Today we'll dive into 10 hidden facts about vultures, the biology, behavior, and science behind why these often misunderstood birds are so extraordinary. Fact 1. Vultures can drink anthrax-infected blood and be totally fine. When people hear that vultures feed on carcasses that would severely sicken most other animals, including those infected with anthrax, botulism, or other bacterial toxins, it sounds like folklore. But the biological reality is that many vultures are exceptionally well equipped to handle pathogens. This resilience is a combination of highly acidic gastric juices, a specialized gut microbiome, and immune system adaptations that together create a multi-layered defense. First, vultures possess extremely low stomach pH. Gastric acid in vultures can reach pH values around 1.0 or below, similar to concentrated human gastric acid and sufficient to inactivate many vegetative bacteria and denature some toxins. Low pH acts as the frontline chemical barrier. Most bacteria and viruses cannot survive prolonged exposure to such acidity. This doesn't mean every microbe is neutralized, but it does greatly reduce infectious viability. For pathogens like Bacillus anthracis, anthrax, which can form highly resistant spores, acidity helps reduce viable vegetative cells and makes conditions in the gut hostile to germination and growth. Second, vultures harbor unique gut microbiomes and digestive enzymes. Studies comparing vulture gut bacteria to those in other scavengers have found communities dominated by acid-tolerant and anaerobic microbes, bacteria that can survive and even outcompete pathogens in the low pH environment. These microbes also assist in chemical degradation through enzymes that break down proteins and fats rapidly, limiting the time pathogens have to act. Some of these resident microbes produce antimicrobial compounds, further suppressing invaders. Think of the vulture gut as a chemical and microbial treatment system. Low pH chemically inactivates many threats while the resident microbes finish the job biologically. Third, vultures often possess physiological and immune system traits tuned to their lifestyle. Their liver, kidneys, and blood contain detoxification pathways that handle increased loads of bacterial byproducts and toxins. Immune cells may be primed for rapid response to endotoxins, the molecules gram-negative bacteria release on death, reducing the risk of septic shock. Behavioral traits also matter. Vultures often consume carrion soon after death when decomposition is less advanced, and they feed in groups, a behavior that can lower individual pathogen exposure through dilution effects. More birds share the same resource rather than one bird overconsuming. Real-world evidence supports these mechanisms. Field observations report vultures feeding on carcasses infected with anthrax without mass die-offs among the scavengers. In many ecosystems, vultures are remarkably free of the diseases that plague other mammals near carcasses. Experiments in necropsies have shown their digestive tracts kill or drastically reduce loads of many bacteria and toxins. Importantly, this is specialized adaptation, not immunity in the human medical sense. Vultures tolerate pathogens that would be dangerous to other species because of an integrated system of chemistry, acid, biology, gut microbiome, and physiology, detox, and immune tuning. So while vultures don't have a superhero antidote to every pathogen, evolution has given them a robust suite of defenses that let them turn what humans consider hazardous waste into safe nourishment. And in doing so, they remove infectious material from ecosystems, reducing disease risk for other animals and humans. If you're enjoying these surprising vulture truths and want more deep dives like this, subscribe to Animal Hidden Facts. Your support strengthens our creative community, helps us produce more evidence-based videos, and keeps these educational journeys alive. And every subscribe, like, and comment directly fuels future research and storytelling. Smash that subscribe button so we can keep bringing hidden biology to light. Fact 2. Their heads are bald for a scientific reason. One of the most iconic images of vultures is the naked head, skin exposed, often wrinkled and colored in ways that range from pale pink to vivid red. While it's easy to assume that the bald head is simply an oddity, it is a precise evolutionary adaptation linked to their scavenging lifestyle and infection control. Feathers provide insulation and protect birds from environmental wear, but in birds that regularly insert their heads deep into carcasses, feathers become liabilities. When a vulture buries its head into decomposing flesh, a routine part of feeding, feathers can become caked with blood, bodily fluids, bacteria, and tissue fragments. Feathers are porous and can trap these materials, creating microhabitats where bacteria and fungi could thrive. If feathers remained on the head, this could increase the risk of prolonged contact with pathogens or create an unpleasant, infection-prone environment. By evolving a mostly featherless head, vultures reduce that risk. Bare skin is easier to keep clean, it dries more rapidly under air exposure and is easier to sanitize by preening behaviors, sunning, or wiping on a perch. Less trapped material means fewer opportunities for microbes to colonize the head, reducing the chance that dangerous organisms will persist in a location they frequently introduce to their bodies. But the benefits go beyond hygiene. Exposed skin supports thermoregulation and displays. The head's vascularized skin helps dissipate heat picked up from the carcass or from prolonged activity. Some species can flush or blanch superficial blood vessels, changing the coloration of the head during social interactions, a visual cue important to establishing dominance or mating readiness in species that use color signals. In certain vultures, bright skin tones can indicate health or hormonal status, aiding mate selection without requiring extended close physical contact. Physiologically, the skin on a vulture's head is also adapted. It can be thicker or contain structures that help resist bacterial colonization. Additionally, a suite of preening behaviors and secretions from the uropygial gland, the oil gland birds use to condition feathers, can be applied to the head area in ways that keep it relatively sterile even without feathers. Sun exposure also acts as a natural disinfectant. UV radiation at the skin surface can reduce microbial loads and dry out residue. This morphological trait is a superb example of how anatomy and behavior co-evolve. The vulture's scavenging niche exerts selection pressures that favor individuals able to keep pathogens off key tissues. Over evolutionary timescales, those pressures led to the bald or sparsely feathered heads we associate with vultures today, a visible sign of a deeply functional adaptation rather than an aesthetic accident. Fact 3. One species has a sense of smell better than most mammals. Sense of smell in birds is often underrated in popular imagination, but in vultures, particularly the turkey vulture, Cathartes aura, olfactory ability is notably advanced and central to foraging success. While many birds rely primarily on vision to find food, turkey vultures can locate hidden carrion by scent alone, sometimes from hundreds of meters or more downwind. The biological underpinnings of this capability explain why smell matters and how it operates in a scavenging ecological niche. Anatomically, the olfactory bulb in the turkey vulture's brain is large relative to many other birds, indicating substantial neural investment in processing smell. Compared to raptors that hunt with visual acuity, turkey vultures have olfactory epithelium and receptors tuned to detect volatile organic compounds, VOCs, released early in decomposition. One key VOC is ethyl mercaptan and related sulfur-containing molecules produced when tissues break down. These compounds are odoriferous even at extremely low concentrations and serve as reliable chemical signatures of carrion. From a sensory ecology perspective, olfaction gives turkey vultures an advantage in particular conditions. In wooded or vegetated landscapes where sight lines are blocked or when carcasses lie beneath the canopy, visual searching is ineffective. Smell allows vultures to detect prey hidden from view. The olfactory-directed flight behavior is also energy efficient. Birds can climb to thermal currents and then glide while sampling scent plumes, homing in as the VOC concentration increases. This hunting mode complements other vultures' visual strategies and reduces competition by partitioning resources. Physiologically, the vulture's nasal anatomy and respiratory flow control optimize scent capture. Turbulent airflow across the olfactory surface increases contact between odorant molecules and receptors, improving detection at low concentrations. Neural circuitry then translates small concentration gradients into directional cues, enabling the bird to orient upwind and follow the plume to its source. Field observations and experiments reinforce the biological story. Researchers releasing scent baits or conducting odor vanishing tests demonstrated turkey vultures' ability to locate fresh carcasses that were visually concealed. In other cases, turkey vultures have been seen circling a rough area and then dropping directly to a carcass beneath foliage, behavior consistent with olfactory homing rather than chance. This olfactory acuity is so reliable that in some localities vultures inadvertently assisted humans in locating gas leaks or buried carcasses by congregating where the scent was strongest. The turkey vulture's sense of smell thus represents a finely tuned sensory adaptation, an enlarged olfactory system, receptor specialization for decomposition VOCs, and behavioral strategies that turn faint chemical traces into actionable foraging information. It's a compelling reminder that birds can be olfactory specialists, that scent plays a central role in some ecological interactions, and that senses evolve to match the demands of a species' niche. Fact 4. Some vultures follow gas leaks. The idea of vultures following gas leaks sounds odd until you realize it is rooted in chemistry and animal behavior. Natural gas and propane are odorless. To make leaks detectable to humans, gas suppliers add a highly odorous compound, commonly ethyl mercaptan or related mercaptans, which has a potent sulfurous, rotten egg smell even at extremely low concentrations. These mercaptans are volatile organic compounds that dissipate into the air and can be detected by animals with sensitive olfactory systems. In some regions and historical anecdotes, vultures, especially turkey vultures with acute smell, have been observed congregating around leaks or pipeline ruptures where mercaptan-scented gas escaped, helping people locate those leaks. The mechanism relies on the same olfactory sensitivity that allows vultures to detect carrion. Decomposing flesh releases sulfurous compounds as proteins break down, and mercaptans are chemically similar. They have sulfur-based functional groups that generate strong odors detectable at trace levels. Vultures tuned to sniff out sulfurous decomposition products therefore also respond to mercaptans. From the bird's perspective, an unusual sulfurous plume indicates a potential food patch. They investigate the source, sometimes revealing a human-made leak. There are documented anecdotal accounts from pipeline workers and rural communities describing vultures hovering or circling above sites later found to be gas leaks. In some historical cases, pipeline companies reportedly used this behavior as a crude early warning. Persistent vulture activity sometimes drew attention to leaks that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. While this practice was never a substitute for modern leak detection technology and carries obvious risks, it illustrates the practical consequences of strong olfactory sensitivity in wildlife. Biologically, a few caveats are important. First, vultures don't know they are following a gas leak in the human sense. They are simply reacting to a chemical cue that resembles the odors they associate with food. Second, not all vulture species have olfactory sensitivity sufficient to detect mercaptans. Old World vultures rely more on sight, so the phenomenon is primarily associated with New World vultures like the turkey vulture. Third, modern pipelines and safety protocols use sophisticated sensors, so relying on birds is obsolete and unreliable. Nevertheless, the anecdote highlights how animal sensory worlds can overlap with human technology. Ecologically, the interaction also warns us that human odorants can mislead wildlife. Animals attracted to industrial scents may be put at risk by infrastructure or may congregate in hazardous locations. Conservationists study these interactions to better understand human-wildlife conflict and to design mitigation strategies. In short, vultures following gas leaks is a real-world intersection of chemistry and sensory ecology. Mercaptans mimic decomposition signals, attracted vultures investigate, and people sometimes notice the birds before they notice the leak, an odd but informative natural experiment in how animals perceive our altered environment. Fact 5. Vultures clean the environment more than sanitation systems. On the surface, it's easy to see vultures as grim recyclers, birds that feed on death. But if you zoom out, their ecological role is extraordinary. They are ecosystem-level sanitation engineers. By efficiently removing carcasses, vultures limit the pool of decomposing matter that would otherwise support disease vectors and pathogen proliferation. effectively performing a service analogous to a natural waste management system. Carrion is a biological hotspot for bacteria, viruses, parasites, and scavenging insects. When large animals die, their carcasses can supply resources for days to weeks, allowing pathogens to multiply and vectors such as flies, rodents, and feral dogs to proliferate. In landscapes lacking efficient carcass removal, because vultures are absent, reduced, or hunted, outbreaks of disease in domestic animals and humans are more common. Historical and ecological studies demonstrate that vulture declines correlate with increases in feral dog populations and associated human health risks, such as rabies outbreaks in areas where vultures have diminished. With vultures intact, carcasses are consumed quickly, shrinking the temporal window during which pathogens can spread. Biologically, vultures are highly effective at this task for several reasons. First, their digestive system allows them to consume materials that most animals avoid: thick hides, internal organs, and putrid flesh, leaving little behind. Second, vultures often feed in large groups, rapidly removing substantial biomass in a short time. Third, their feeding behavior tends to prevent carcass dispersion. By consuming the remains where they lie, vultures reduce the need for other scavengers to carry or drag pieces away, limiting the spread of contaminants across the landscape. A striking example is the role vultures played in South Asia in the latter 20th century. Dramatic declines in vulture numbers due to veterinary drug residues in cattle carcasses led to a cascade. More carcasses remained unconsumed, feral dog numbers rose, and rabies incidents increased in human populations. This chain of effects highlighted how a decline in a single ecological guild could have broader public health consequences. The restoration or protection of vulture populations can therefore be seen as an investment in natural sanitation and disease control. From an ecosystem services perspective, vultures provide substantial economic and health value. Their carcass removal lowers pathogen exposure for livestock and people, reduces the biomass available to pest species, and helps recycle nutrients back into the food web. In rural and pastoral communities, vultures' efficiency can replace or complement human-managed disposal methods that are often costly or environmentally harmful. This is why conservationists emphasize vulture protection not only for biodiversity reasons but also for human well-being. Keeping vultures healthy keeps landscapes cleaner and safer. Thus, vultures act as natural sanitation systems, not replacements for modern waste management, but potent ecological allies that remove decay and reduce disease pressure across ecosystems. Their loss is not just a conservation problem, it is a public health and livelihoods problem with measurable consequences. Fact 6. They sometimes pee on themselves, on purpose. The description "pee on themselves" sounds crude, but for many birds, and some vultures in particular contexts, urination or excretion that moistens the legs and feet is an adaptive behavior called urohydrosis. It's a thermoregulatory and antimicrobial practice observed in several large birds, including storks, certain raptors, and vultures. The behavior involves excreting a watery, sometimes white, uric acid-rich fluid onto the legs and allowing it to evaporate, producing a cooling effect and potentially adding antimicrobial protection. Bird excreta differ from mammalian urine because birds excrete nitrogenous waste as uric acid, a semi-solid white paste, combined with feces in a cloacal discharge. The watery fraction provides moisture that, when spread over unfeathered skin, enhances evaporative cooling. For birds inhabiting hot climates, legs and bare skin are effective sites for evaporative heat loss. Think of the way humans sweat across large surface areas. Since many vultures have exposed, vascularized legs and bare heads, applying moisture there is an efficient way to offload heat, especially when ambient temperatures are high and shade is limited. From a physiological standpoint, the evaporation of water, or watery excreta, consumes latent heat, drawing thermal energy from the skin and lowering body temperature. This is crucial for large, soaring birds that may spend hours in strong solar radiation or warm updrafts. Without effective cooling, they risk hyperthermia. Urohydrosis complements other cooling strategies such as wing drooping, panting, or seeking shade, and is particularly useful when airflow is limited because evaporative cooling can still operate at lower wind speeds. The antimicrobial aspect is more nuanced but biologically plausible. Uric acid and other compounds in bird excreta can have antibacterial properties, and the wetting and drying cycle on bare skin may help reduce surface microbial loads by washing away dust and pathogens. Additionally, in birds that feed on carrion, anything that reduces the chance of pathogenic colonization on extremities confers an advantage. By wetting and then drying the legs in sunlight, birds combine mechanical cleaning with UV exposure, which further reduces microbial viability. Behaviorally, urohydrosis is often expressed deliberately. Birds orient to shade or perches where evaporative cooling will be maximized, and they sometimes deliberately wet their legs when temperatures rise. Observations of vultures standing on hot days with wet legs and open beaks indicate coordinated physiological responses to heat stress. It's important to emphasize that peeing on themselves is not sloppy behavior but an evolved adaptation with measurable thermoregulatory and hygienic benefits. In the harsh environments many vultures inhabit, hot, open landscapes with high solar loads, urohydrosis is an efficient, low-cost way to regulate temperature and manage exposure to microbes and environmental grime. Evolution frequently repurposes materials at hand, and for vultures, their own excreta function as an accessible tool for staying cool and cleaner in a risky niche. Fact 7. Their stomach acid is stronger than battery acid. The metaphoric line that vulture stomach acid is stronger than battery acid makes for a dramatic soundbite, but it needs procontextualization. What's biologically meaningful is that vulture gastric fluids are extremely acidic and powerful digestive environments, among the most caustic of vertebrates, enabling them to break down tough tissues, bones, and pathogen-laden material that many other animals cannot digest. The chemical potency of vulture gastric juice derives from very low pH combined with potent enzymes and muscular grinding, producing a digestive system optimized for carrion processing. Stomach acidity is measured by pH. Lower values indicate stronger acidity. Human gastric pH typically ranges from 1.5 to 3.5 after meals. Vulture stomach pH values have been measured to be similarly low or sometimes even lower in some species, often around pH 1 or slightly above, sufficient to denature proteins, disrupt cell membranes, and inactivate many microbes. Combined with proteolytic enzymes, proteases, and mechanical breakdown, this chemical attack rapidly disassembles organic matter. Why is such acidity important? First, it dissolves and softens tough structures like tendon and connective tissue, enabling the digestive tract to access muscle and fat. Some vultures, especially species like the bearded vulture, which also practices osteophagy, bone eating, can ingest large bone fragments and rely on acid and grit to reduce them to digestible particles. The high acidity helps solubilize bone matrix over time, allowing more complete nutrient extraction. Second, low pH acts as an antimicrobial barrier. Many bacteria and viruses cannot survive sustained exposure to strongly acidic conditions, and certain toxins are denatured by acid. This reduces disease risk from spoiled materials. However, acid alone is not infallible. Resistant bacterial spores and some toxins can withstand acidity. Vultures compensate with complementary defenses, rapid passage time, specialized microbiota, robust immune responses, and behavioral strategies. One must be cautious comparing vulture gastric juice to battery acid, a colloquial term usually referring to sulfuric acid used in car batteries. Battery acid is a concentrated mineral acid with extremely low pH, often below 1, and highly corrosive properties on many materials, including metals and tissue. Scientific assessments show that vulture gastric acid approaches but does not perfectly mirror industrial sulfuric acid in corrosivity or chemical composition. The comparison is useful to convey the idea of extreme acidity, but it can mislead if interpreted literally. Vulture acid is organic and enzyme-rich. It serves a biological purpose and operates within living tissue without destroying the bird's own gut because the mucosal barrier and controlled secretion protect internal tissues. The biological architecture supporting such acidity is crucial: specialized stomach lining resistant to acid, rapid neutralization as food leaves the stomach, and coordinated bile and pancreatic secretions that manage digestion downstream. In birds that ingest bones, mechanical gizzards and gastroliths, and some species, further grind down material. And some, vultures possess highly acidic and enzymatically potent stomachs tailored to decompose and sanitize carrion. The battery acid comparison is colorful and partially illustrative, but the real story is the integrated physiological system that uses extreme acidity, enzymes, and microbiology to turn dangerous decay into safe, usable nutrients. Fact 8. Vultures vomit as a defense mechanism. Projectile vomiting in vultures is more than a gross-out trick. It's a sophisticated defense and survival strategy with multiple adaptive benefits. When threatened, many vulture species can regurgitate semi-digested stomach contents forcefully. This behavior serves several purposes. It deters predators, reduces body mass for a quick escape, and in some contexts may chemically repel competitors or distract them. From an anti-predator standpoint, the offensive smell and sticky, partially digested material ejected by a vulture can be a powerful deterrent. Predators and competitors, especially mammals with sensitive olfactory systems, often avoid strong, unfamiliar odors that may signal unhygienic or toxic material. The vomit also sprays physically, potentially fouling a predator's fur or feathers, impairing its sensory function, or imposing a need to groom instead of pursue. This is particularly useful when a vulture is nesting on a carcass or perched in exposed locations where immediate flight is difficult. Mechanically, regurgitation can lighten the bird's weight, which is crucial for takeoff in heavy-bodied, wing-loading species. If a vulture needs an urgent escape, ejecting several hundred grams of semi-digested food can make the difference between being grounded and achieving the lift needed for flight. For large birds, small changes in mass significantly affect takeoff performance, climb rate, and maneuverability. Thus, vomiting is an emergency jettison system. There are also intraspecific and interspecific competitive functions. At feeding sites crowded with multiple scavengers, projectiles of vomit can assert dominance or discourage others from approaching a prized resource. In some New World vultures, this behavior is a response to harassment by larger predators or even by aggressive conspecifics around a carcass. Physiologically, regurgitation is enabled by the bird's digestive tract architecture and muscular control. Vultures can relax a sphincter and use abdominal musculature to expel stomach contents. The material is often partly digested, partly liquid, and contains bacteria and tissue. Importantly, vomiting is not typically a chronic behavior. It is used judiciously when the costs, loss of nutritive material, are outweighed by survival benefit. Ecologically, the behavior can have downstream effects. Animals covered in vulture vomit may need to bathe or groom extensively, temporarily altering their risk profile and behavior. For human observers, the sight can be shocking, but the adaptive logic is straightforward. A stinky, messy ejecta is an efficient, immediate defense that draws on what vultures already carry, ingested carrion, and repurposes it into a deterrent or an aviation aid. So while vultures vomit is an attention-grabbing fact, it is a great example of how evolution co-opts ordinary physiological processes, regurgitation, into multifunctional tools for survival, defense, rapid weight reduction, and competition management, all tailored to a life that revolves around unpredictable and risky food resources. Fact 9. They use their wings like solar panels. If you've ever watched a vulture perched with its wings outstretched, you might chalk it up to sunbathing. But that posture, often called wing spreading or sun worshipping, serves a suite of important functions in thermoregulation, hygiene, and pathogen control, functioning much like biological solar panels and drying racks. Physiologically, spreading the wings exposes a large surface area to sunlight and air. This accomplishes two immediate things. First, the sun warms the bird's body, which is useful in the morning when temperatures are low. By absorbing solar radiation on the wing membranes and body, the vulture can raise its body temperature without expending metabolic energy that would otherwise be used in shivering or muscle activity. This energy-saving strategy is particularly important for soaring birds that require a lot of energy for flight. Warming up via passive solar radiation conserves reserves for foraging and flight. Second, wing spreading accelerates the drying of feathers and skin after moisture exposure. Wet feathers are heavy and lose much of their insulating and aerodynamic properties. Drying in the sun helps restore feather function, ensures efficient thermoregulation, and reduces the cost of flight. For birds that feed on wet, bloody carcasses, or live in humid climates where condensing moisture is common. This drying prevents feather matting and mechanical stress. Hygiene and pathogen control are additional benefits. Sunlight brings ultraviolet (UV) radiation, which has disinfectant properties. Exposing feather surfaces and skin to UV helps reduce bacterial and fungal loads that can accumulate from contact with decomposing tissue. UV radiation can degrade microbial DNA and inactivate some organisms, functioning as a natural sanitizer. In combination with wing shaking and preening, sunning therefore plays a role in maintaining feather health and limiting microbial colonization. Behaviorally, wing spreading also communicates to conspecifics. The posture can indicate territorial claims, health status, or readiness to fly. A bird with well-maintained, spread wings signals vigor and low parasite load, which may be relevant during social interactions around roosts or carcasses. Finally, solar thermoregulation ties into flight behavior. Vultures often use thermals, rising columns of warm air, to gain altitude with little energy expenditure. Warming the body and wings helps efficient use of those thermals, while dried and properly aligned feathers maximize the aerodynamic lift needed for soaring. Sunning therefore prepares the vulture for long flights, conserving energy while maintaining the physical condition required for aerodynamic efficiency. In short, wing spreading is multifunctional. It's a heat capture strategy, a drying and feather maintenance behavior, a natural disinfectant regimen via UV exposure, and a preparatory posture for energetically efficient flight. By acting like living solar panels and drying racks, vultures harness environmental energy to stay healthy and flight-ready, a simple behavior with big benefits. Fact 10. Some vultures barely vocalize. Vultures are often quiet compared to songbirds or parrots, and for good anatomical reasons. Many vulture species have reduced vocal ability because their vocal organ, the syrinx, is underdeveloped relative to that of songbirds. The syrinx is located at the base of the trachea and produces the rich variety of avian sounds when complex musculature and specialized membranes vibrate. In vultures, the syrinx is generally simple and lacks the muscles or structure necessary for complex tonal modulation, so most species can't sing or produce melodious calls. Instead, they communicate through hisses, grunts, bill clapping, and body language. There are several adaptive reasons for limited vocalization. First, vultures' social and foraging systems reduce the need for long-distance vocal signaling. Many vultures rely on visual cues, soaring silhouettes and group congregations, rather than acoustic calls, to find carcasses. When feeding, birds are often in open contexts where sight lines are good and vocal calls would be less effective or unnecessary. For nesting and roosting, visual displays and postural signals suffice for pair bonding and conflict resolution. Second, feeding ecology imposes constraints. Vultures congregate at carcasses where noise might attract predators or competitors, and quiet tolerance often facilitates feeding in close groups. Hissing, bill clapping, or non-vocal displays are effective for short-range communication about dominance in space without creating long-distance signals that might bring unwanted attention. Third, the syrinx's reduced complexity may be a result of evolutionary trade-offs. Vulture lineages devoted resources to other adaptations, foraging efficiency, digestive specialization, and flight capabilities, rather than to the neural and muscular machinery required for complex vocalizations. Developing and maintaining complex syrinx musculature and the neural control circuits for song is metabolically costly and only favored where vocal communication yields significant selective advantage, such as in songbirds where territory and mate attraction depend on song. That said, barely vocalized does not mean silent or uncommunicative. Vultures rely on a rich repertoire of behavioral cues: wing spreading, head posturing, plumage ruffling, bill gaping, and gait changes convey intent and status. In the nesting context, tactile behaviors and subtle visual signals maintain pair bonds. Some species produce low croaks, grunts, or hisses, the acoustic equivalents of human whispering, appropriate for short-range interactions. Additionally, when in distress, some vultures may produce louder sounds than in normal social contexts. The sparsity of vocalization has practical implications for research and conservation. Acoustic monitoring techniques effective for songbirds may miss vulture activity, requiring visual surveys or alternative sensors. For viewers and ornithologists, the quietness contributes to vultures' mystique. These birds communicate and coordinate through a blend of quiet sounds and conspicuous body language, favoring behaviors that suit their open, carcass-centered lifestyles. Thank you for watching Animal Hidden Facts. Don't forget to subscribe, support our channel, and stay tuned for more amazing insights in our next video.